struck me is, so there's the trauma. And of course, when we're talking about trauma, then I think about my A trauma and my B trauma. Mm-hmm. And I think, okay, so we have these experiences, but then so incredibly powerful is our experience of the experience. Like,
right.
10 people could have the same experience. Lockers fall on them.
Right.
And depending on our experience of that, who comes for us, what happens, that's so powerful. And also, it's not like if somebody, like the whole idea of rupture and repair, like if the repair is so powerful, that repair can be done 10 years later.
Right. Right.
And like thinking of A and B trauma, a couple of things. And I thought, okay, have I really looked somebody in the eye and told, they're not anything you both of you probably know, but it's like, do we tell someone, not just like as a side story or a, this or that, but do we look someone in the eye and say, this is what that was?
Right. Right. Well, I even think about, so evil kind of gets us coming and going, mm-hmm. in the sense that, like, so for the story of Julia, mm-hmm. like who is she going to tell that story to? Right. Or like Pepper, like, even now as adults, like who wants to tell the stories of like really like horrendous trauma,
right?
Because of the shame that we've experienced as a result of it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to name it for that reason. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of the spectrum is like, so like these little moments of anxiety that I'm discovering that I have that are just like everywhere. I don't want to talk about them either, because I feel like in a previous conversation, when you're like, when am I going to like grow up and like this not be a problem anymore?
Right. Yeah.
Like, wait a minute. As it turns out, it's not about growing up. Like, in fact, I can't grow up mm-hmm. if I don't actually return and look at that very space mm-hmm. and be present with it. Mm-hmm. Be curious about it. Welcome that experience into the room instead of trying to dissociate from it or get rid of it or just go past it or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we can create beauty. Like when we tell someone and experience someone coming toward us.
Yeah. 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 It's funny. I have a friend who lives in Ashland, Ohio. Terry Wardle is his name. And he is the age that my youngest of my three older brothers would be if he were still living. And I met Terry about 4.5 years ago. And I have found in Terry to be the older brother that I've never had. Mm-hmm. Like the like the person who, like, I've got, like, I only know brothers, like experientially in my own family, I only know them to be kind of like uncles. Really. Mm-hmm. I don't really know them to be brothers. Like they're, we're in the house together, we're all the things, right? Oh, brothers or sisters. And, you don't, like, I realize that, like, I grew up in living in a world in my mind as if, like, I wouldn't have known this when I was 10 or 17. I wouldn't have had words for this, but the sense in which, like, I'm responsible for my well-being, for my emotional well-being. Like I like this is like the narrative that gets created without words, mm-hmm. but this, and the whole notion that someone would be interested enough in me to come and find me. When, unless I send a signal that says, hey, could we talk? Hey, like, right. But I still got to initiate it. I gotta check on that. And I gotta mm-hmm. let you know that I could. And then when I do, then like, yeah, we'll talk about your. We were at a conference. We'd known each other for a little while, and we were speaking at a conference together. We were staying in the same hotel, and I had arrived, and he was going to meet me, and we were going to go for dinner. And usually, they yell, meet me at the restaurant or whatever at the hotel. And I hadn't seen him yet. I come down the elevator door opens, and you know how in places where, the elevator doors open, like they'll have like a coffee table and a couple of chairs sitting there. I don't really know why people do that. I mean, like people are just sitting there in the coffee, like having coffee, like
so you
outside.
have a convenient place to discuss the ups and downs of life.
Oh, very good.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
That's very good. That's very good.
Kind of. I mean,
That's very good.
That's good.
That's very good. But
It's not my best.
I
would agree.
step off. I step off the elevator. The doors open, and there sits Terry,
Oh,
waiting.
he's
waiting
for you.
Waiting for me. Nobody asked him to. Like, I didn't say I'll meet you at the bottom of the elevator. There was no like, and I gotta tell you, like,
Oh,
it's like somebody had, like, I had this moment. It's like somebody had saved me from drowning.
oh.
And I return to this, like it just gets it, like it gets right here in my throat. I return to this, like this sense that somebody's coming unsolicited, waiting, looking, but who's like 10, 12 years my senior, who in many respects is like an older brother, somewhere between that and like being a young, a father, something of that nature.
Yeah.
And that whole sense that, like, you don't know where your trauma has lived until somebody like does something that lets you know that, like, this is the thing that I have never had, that I didn't know that I never had, until you have it.
Right. You didn't know you needed it until you had it, or wanted it until you got it. It's like, yes, that's it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, I think, I think, like, so for me, like Pepper, you and Amy, your collective and corporate, like, all the things that all the things about this podcast, I feel like you guys come for me. Like, and there are these small, like, you might say death of 1,000 traumatic cuts that little by little by little by little by little get bathed in the beauty of the work that we're doing. It's a big deal for me. I feel like it's like I get to do the podcast and I'm doing rehab at the same time. I mean, sorry that you're not getting paid any more than you are for this, for all the work you're doing.
Yeah, but I'm not paying your fees either that I'm getting in therapy. So
Yeah, then it's like, okay, who comes for us? And then who do I go to? Who do I go find?
Yeah.
And that's a vulnerable act. And
can
be delightful.
Yeah. My wife, Phyllis, our next door neighbor, got a call last. I got a call. I forget, some day last week, that she's the third or fourth of 4 adult children, ranging in age from like early to mid 40s to early 50s. And the oldest sibling, 53, otherwise completely healthy, died of a sudden heart attack out of state. It's just devastating.
Oh my gosh.
And Phyllis heard the news, and she texted me and she says, I think I need to go. I got to go next door, because like we had just heard it through the email grapevine of our neighborhood. And she goes next door, and and our neighbor's daughter meets at the door, and Phyllis said, look, if she's not able to come, it's okay. But she comes and she steps outside and she just falls into Phyllis's arms and is just bawling.
Oh.
But I think she's going to need people to come and find her for weeks. That's what Phyllis did. That's what Terry did. That's what you guys do. And some of what's so difficult, of course, is we'll talk more and more about this, like this whole intimacy thing that we talked about at the end of this recording. It's so tricky because trauma takes place in that context. And so the very thing
Mhm.
that we need for healing is remembered as the context in which the violence took place.
Right.
And so it's tricky. It takes time, it takes practice. It takes a community.
It's
I had a
good work.
patient. I had a patient. I have a patient who has just had some really brutal things happen to them growing up, and then had some emotionally brutal things that happened to them within the last 3 or 4 years. And they're really it's a woman, and their relationship with men in general is iffy. And so the whole notion of doing therapy with male is also fraught with challenges. And we had this amazing conversation a couple of weeks ago where I had said something the week or two before, in which, in my enthusiasm, I was saying one thing, but she perceived it in a different way and felt misunderstood and dismissed by me. Which not only did she feel misunderstood and dismissed, but she was also really angry. She's mad about it. Now, not mad like I'm not coming back. It's not like scorched earth anger, but she was mad. And this person doesn't have practice telling a male that she's really angry. There's no so let alone let yourself feel it, let alone articulate it.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're working together with another therapist together, and the patient had talked to the other therapist, kind of practicing about what does it mean about telling Curt that I'm mad at him.
Wow.
And
Terrifying.
it was, and this would be one of those things where one might say, like, okay, so you're pissed, so go in and tell them you're pissed, what's the big deal, right?
Right.
This is how it's so easy for us to misunderstand the perception of others and the challenges that they have, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't know any of this is going on until the day that she walks in and she starts to talk about this.
Yay.
It was unbelievable. It was so beautiful. And I was so proud of her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I was not happy about my having to be corrected. I'm not happy about oh yeah, I guess I did kind of jump the gun on what I said, and at the same time, that's an example of how memory of being powerless to do anything when your system says fight or flight, right? I'm in my anger, but I'm powerless to do either of those. And now you're volunteering to come into a space where you're and right. They do the work.
Ugh.
And it's easy to think, that's just a small thing. No,
that's huge.
No, it's like moving Everest.
But in that sense, it's almost good that she felt dismissed by you, because then that gives her the opportunity, look what happened. Then she was somehow able to communicate that to you. And
Curt realizes that. That's why he's always dismissing everybody.
Right. Look on.
Hey,
y'all,
I'm going to give you the opportunity.
That's right. I'm looking
giving you an opportunity.
That's right. I'm looking for more work. I know that it'll be another hour for you in my office.
It's huge. Because then that will give her an ounce further. It's just, yeah.
I'm really struck by, again, I return to this frequently. I continue to be struck by the way I am moved by the pacing of the storytelling and screenplay and filming of The Chosen.
Oh.
And how, Jesus is not willing to move any faster than he's willing to move. And there are these very small moments. There's a moment, I have this, this collection of moments where Philip is talking to Matthew, or Jesus is talking to Thomas. And they're these 90 to 120-second dialogue bits that it's like, oh my gosh, it's a small moment in time, but that moment is going to be the auger that digs to the center of the earth. But it's going to take it's going to be over and over and over and over again. Like these small moments that look small at first glance, but are absolutely huge in like what happens to Thomas and what happens to Matthew when he's talking to Philip. And this sense that like for my patient, like it's huge for her to be able to name her anger. Yes, I'm mad at you.
Yeah.
And have the experience that the earth does not open and swallow her.
Right.
And it took great risk for her to do it because, like, she doesn't know what I'm going to do.
I have a friend out in California, and early on in our friendship, we were together at a party, and unbeknownst to me, I had said something to him that he took wrong, and there was this perception that I was being an ass, which can happen.
It's hard to
But
imagine.
but in this particular case, it wasn't. The next day, he called me up, and he said, "I got to talk to you about something." He said, "Because I like you, and
I want to still like you.
And this happened last night, and we need to talk about this." And I immediately said, "You have no idea how much respect that I have for you right now." And I think it made us much better friends. And the fact that he said, because I could very easily just not bring this up and just let it go and just be angry and just go on. And I don't, I've got enough friends. I don't really, but he named it right away and said, "Look, this is what you did." And I'm like,
what a
I'm
gift.
so glad that you brought it up.
Yeah.
And
that's a bid for connection, right? That's
right.
Yeah. And you took the bait, right? You
Yeah, because how often will we, especially early in a relationship, somebody's a jerk and you're like, okay, next.
Yeah. Right.
I don't need to go deal with that.
Right. Well, I mean, I talked about that thing about like just repairing ruptures. It's such a big deal. And I think that we do what you just said, right? They're just like, no, I don't need to address that. I don't need to, we treat it all kind of like, the moment when I get cut off in traffic by some unknown driver and I just like, but I'm just going to let him go. Like, I'm not going to go like repair that. But we do that with a lot of stuff that goes by, and of course, there are moments, right? Like when in marriage, these things happen on occasion. You're like, okay, like I know what this is, and I'm not like that kind of stung, but I know where this is coming from, and so there's sometimes we say it, and sometimes I'm just going to let that one go. So there is this, but I wouldn't be able to just like let it go all the time. At some point, we're going to have to say, so this happened. So what's happening here? Well, I just got off the phone with my dad or my mom or these kinds of things. And again, those are the kinds of things where if we just simply dismiss them, that becomes those small traumatic moments that we collect that at some point becomes a conflagration. If we're not doing the very thing, Pepper, that your friend decided to do, which is, I'm going to keep a short account.
Well, and that's it. It's also in a marriage or in a relationship, it's seeing those ruptures and then you going and talking about them.
Right.
And saying, I see how I caused whatever, it's not just going to the other person and saying, you did this is what you did. It's it's being self-aware enough to know outside of the heat of the moment, and going back and saying, I'm sorry, and this is what I did, this is where that came from, and this is what I think I'm working on, and those kind of things.
I had another experience. So this, the patient I just described, I had, we might say that her experience, her perception of what was happening was one thing. If you had asked me to tell the story, I would say, oh, I don't I have a different perception of what I was doing. I acknowledge that the way that I did it landed in a particular way that makes sense to me, and that I would want to do that differently. But I don't have some sense that like I was doing something mindless or wrong or whatever in that sense. It's just that what I did was experienced by her in a way that like she felt that, and she came back and talked to her. I'm like, yeah, I would do that differently. I would absolutely do that differently.
Mhm.
But I don't have a sense that like I like, oh my gosh, like you're right. Like I really kind of screwed that up. Like I mistreated you in a way that I need to like do, like I need to do it differently, not just because it would be better for you, but because like I shouldn't be doing that at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
Later this past week, I have another experience in which I have a patient who came in, wanted to, you know, we are kind of like a person that I see once a quarter. And I could tell that like something wasn't quite right. They weren't quite as warm, quite as forthcoming.
Mhm.
And she started to hint at, the bottom line is that administratively, we dropped the ball. I dropped the ball on something administratively for her that had to do with some medical stuff. And, you know, she pointed that out, and it led to her then having some challenges with medicine and side effects and so forth and so on that were really unpleasant and scary for her and so forth and so on. And this is one of those moments in which I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
I screwed this up. Like I screwed this up. Now, here's the thing. I said, and she, and of course she was soft pedaling it. She was not, you know, she wasn't like, yeah, she's kind of like telling me what happened, but she's not telling me anything like, and I'm really upset with you.
Right. Yeah.
She's not saying that. She's just talking about what,
Factual.
you know, the events that happened, but she's not talking about her emotional experience of it. So to what you're saying, Pepper, I said, wait a minute. There's just no question that I dropped this ball. This is my fault. And she said, no, it's okay. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No. It's not okay. It wasn't okay when it happened. It's not okay. It won't ever be okay. I don't ever want this to happen to you again. So to your point about when we seek to repair traumas that we are responsible for, and you know, it's not easy for me to want to do this. I'm not looking forward to saying I've been an ass.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can say that the connection that we felt when she and I had fully repaired this. But again, many people who've been traumatized, like they're not going to say, I'm really angry with you. You did that. Like they're going to know it's okay. Because to say more than that is an invitation for who knows what. Like,
Even
no,
further.
I'm angry. I'm upset. Right. And like, and
Yeah.
to which there's further trauma that might come. Like,
Right.
you know, she's not going to.
Dismissive or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. And so it behooves us, when we're in the business of repairing, to be able to name what it is that we've done and
Mhm.
what it has done to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I don't want to be that person who does that. And I want you to forgive me. And going further and talking to her and saying, like, I don't want your forgiveness to be something that you do right now because you're not ready for it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because, like, you know, a month from now, the thing that happened last, like the prescription is going to come due, and you're going to wonder, like, is Curt going to come
Is that
through?
going to happen? Mhm.
And it's going to call up old stuff, like, and I feel like, and you're going to have to forgive me again. So I know that, like, and I just want to say, like, it's okay. It might take a while. It's okay. I get it. And I just want you to know, like, I'm going to work to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Mhm.
And of course, I'm, you know, it's like, even for our part, like we're imperfect. Like I can't guarantee that I would never make a mistake again, which is like also part of the
Right.
thing. Like, once I've committed an act that I want to repair, I want to repair it. But then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like, oh, I hope I don't do this again. You know, it's like being a parent. You hurt your kid's feelings, and
Or
you're
a
like,
husband,
hey,
or a friend, or a
Yeah, we're gonna
daughter,
do it
or
again.
a
We're
son.
gonna do it
You're going to
again.
do it again.
That's where, if we all just stay in the room, then it's going to be okay.
Yeah.